All right, let's talk about a problem that's actually, a pretty good problem to have. We're going to break down what you do when your business is so successful that you can't keep up with demand. We'll get into how you can make the absolute best decisions when your resources are stretched to the limit and you just can't have it all. So just imagine this for a second. Your products are absolutely flying off the shelves. It's amazing, but you've hit a wall. Maybe you're out of skilled people to make this stuff, or a key material is suddenly impossible to get. Your machines are already running 24/7. This isn't a problem of getting more customers. It's a problem of supply. It's a problem of scarcity. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll dig into what scarcity really means for a business. Then, we'll look at a simple way to handle just one bottleneck. After that, we'll level up and see what happens when you're juggling multiple problems at once. We'll also uncover some hidden, super valuable info about your resources. And finally, we'll take a step back and talk about the real-world limits of these methods. Okay, first things first, we have to get right to the heart of the issue. Because before you can fix anything, you've got to know exactly what's holding you back. And that right there is the core problem of scarcity. Now, the official term for this kind of roadblock is a limiting factor. You might also hear it called a scarce resource. But really, it's just anything that's stopping your business from making and selling everything it possibly could. It's that one thing you just wish you had more of. And this can be almost anything. Sometimes, believe it or not, it's market demand itself. You can just only sell so much. But more often, it's something internal. Not enough hours on your machines, a shortage of workers with the right skills, a critical raw material that's hard to come by. It could even be as simple as not having enough cash on hand to fund all the production. So, when you're staring down one of these constraints, what's the goal? Your first thought is probably maximize profit, right? But we can get a little more specific than that. See, in the short term, your big fixed costs, like rent, big salaries, they aren't going to change. So the real goal, the thing we want to squeeze every last drop out of, is maximizing contribution. And that's just your sales price minus all your variable costs. All right, so we know our goal is to maximize contribution. Now let's start with the simplest version of this puzzle. What do you do when there's only one single thing holding you back? Just one bottleneck. For this exact scenario, there's a fantastic, really straightforward tool called key factor analysis. It's just a systematic way to figure out the absolute best, most profitable way to use that one precious, limited resource you've got. And it's a simple, logical 5-step process. First, you nail down exactly what that scarce resource is. Second, you figure out the contribution you make on every single unit of each product. Third, and this is the absolute key, this is the magic step, you calculate the contribution you get for every unit times of that scarce resource. Fourth, you rank your products based on that number. And finally, you build your production plan based on that ranking, from best to worst. Okay, now look at this, because this is where it all clicks into place. You've got product A, a table, and product B, a chair. The table makes you more contribution per unit, $50 versus $30 for the chair. So your gut instinct says, make the tables, they're more profitable. But hold on, the table takes 2 hours of labor and the chair only takes 1. So when we do that magic step, calculating contribution per labor hour, the whole story flips. The chair actually gives you $30 for every hour you invest, while the table only gives you $25. The takeaway here is huge. You should make every single chair you can sell first, and only then use any leftover hours to make tables. That's great for one bottleneck, but let's be real. Life is rarely that simple, right? What happens when things get messy? What if you're short on skilled labor and a key raw material at the very same time? Now the problem is a whole lot more complex. This is exactly where our simple tool, key factor analysis, kind of runs out of steam. It's built for one problem at a time. When you have 2 or more, you need to bring out the big guns. A technique called linear programming. We're moving from a simple ranking system to a full-on mathematical optimization. It's more work, but it's incredibly powerful and precise. So what is linear programming? Well, it's a mathematical method that finds the absolute best production mix to maximize your contribution, all while playing by the rules of all your different limitations at the same time. It's really the heavy-duty power tool for these kinds of complex decisions. Now, the first part is just translating your business problem into the language of math. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. You just define your variables, like X is the number of tables, Y is the number of chairs. Then you write out your main goal, your objective function. What are we trying to do? We're trying to maximize contribution. Finally, you just list out all your rules, your constraints, as simple inequalities, like the hours for tables plus the hours for chairs has to be less than or equal to the 4,000 total hours you have.
And once you've set the problem up, you can solve it. You can actually do it visually. You can plot your constraints on a graph and find the best possible point within the area they create. Or if you are to be super precise, you can use algebra, simultaneous equations, to pinpoint the exact optimal mix.
Now, finding the perfect production plan is amazing, but linear programming gives you so much more than just that. The solution itself holds some incredibly valuable secrets about your resources. Let's dig into what those are. So the first cool concept is something called slack. It's a simple idea. It's just the amount of a resource you have left over once you're done with your optimal production plan. So if you have 1,000 pounds of wood, but your perfect plan only uses 900, you've got 100 pounds of slack. Easy enough, right? But what about the other side of that coin? If a resource is completely used up in your optimal plan, it has zero slack. And that's what we call a critical or a binding constraint. This is your true bottleneck. It's the thing that is actively stopping you from making even more contribution. And that brings us to maybe the most powerful idea in this whole analysis, the shadow price. The shadow price tells you exactly how much your total contribution would go up if you could get your hands on just one more unit of a critical, fully used resource. And it only applies to those bottlenecks, the resources with zero slack. So let's say we run all the numbers and the computer spits out this. The shadow price for 1 hour of our skilled labor is $15. Okay, what does that actually mean for our business? This is just brilliant. What that number tells you is that getting 1 more hour of labor will increase your company's total contribution by $15. So that means you should be willing to pay a premium of up to $15 on top of the normal hourly rate to get that extra hour. It literally tells you how much you can afford to pay for overtime or to bring in a temp worker to break through that bottleneck. That's powerful stuff. So these models are obviously incredibly powerful, but at the end of the day, they are just that, models of reality. And to use them wisely, we have to understand what assumptions they're built on. It's time for a little reality check. We've got to keep a few things in mind here. These models assume your one and only goal is to maximize contribution. They assume your costs and prices are fixed no matter how many you make. They also assume every single unit you produce takes the exact same amount of resources. And really critically, because they ignore all those fixed costs, this is purely a tool for short-term decisions. And that really brings us to our final and maybe most important question. The math might point to a crystal clear, optimal plan. But is that plan always the smartest strategic decision for the future of your business? I mean, what if that optimal plan tells you to drop a product that one of your biggest, most important long-term customers absolutely loves? The math gives you the perfect answer for right now, but the best decision? Well, that always requires a layer of human wisdom and strategic judgment for what comes next.